Afternoon guys, Dave Canterbury back from Pathfinder School. It's another video for you here. I'm going to make a trapping video. I was looking through SRI issue 3 yesterday when I did the review, the stump top review on that for you guys yesterday, and the L7 trap was in there by Joe Flowers. And that L7 trap basically is a trigger system that is used for not only trapping for mammals, but you can also use it to set a fishing trap that will actually set your hook for you as well when that trap is set from the line being in the water and the fish dragging it off. The traps that we teach in the Pathfinder system use simple toggle trigger systems. And the reason I teach those is because many of those traps can be set up with very little use of tools and very little use of carving of notches and things of that nature, and that's why I use them. So what I wanted to do was I kind of wanted to show you a trap that I teach in Pathfinder Basics that can be adapted to a fishing trap that can also be used to catch mammals with. That's a variation of a toggle trigger system, which is what we teach in the Pathfinder system. And you can make this trap pretty much with virtually no tools. The only tool I'm going to use to do anything is I'm going to use a tool to cut the string of my knife. So I'm not dulling my tool by carving a bunch of notches and things like that, and I've pretty much just got dead sticks here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the first dead stick that I've got and I'm just going to break it in half pretty much, just like that. And then I'm going to tie it together or lash it together with this piece of cordage. So I'll tie one overhand knot in this cordage to leave a loop, and that'll give me a slip and a tail. And you can see I've got a tail on the end of that knot that now I can use to tie off to once I get my wrapping done for my lashings. Now I'll just put the other end of that cord through that loop, creating a slip knot just like I would do for a normal snare. And I'll take and lash these sticks together with this, just like this. And I don't have to wrap them real tight, not that big of a deal. And then I'll tie just a square knot in the tag that I left behind and the end of this rope to give myself basically a small frame like I would have if I were using a fork, except I didn't go through the process of harvesting a fork. I couldn't find one on the ground. In an emergency situation, it's very easy just to do this. Then what I'm going to do is break that off to the length I think I need. Again, trying not to use tools if I don't have to conserve things. Now, I'm going to use this for a spring branch right here. And in a situation where I was really going to set a trap with this to try to get food with it, I would trim all these branches off to cut down, and probably cut it off right in here to cut down on the aerodynamic issue that I would have by these things flipping up into the wind and creating drag, because I want this to spring back as fast as possible. Because I'm going to just use it for demonstration, I don't want to damage this live tree, so I'm going to leave it like it is, and I'm going to tie my snare about right here. So I'm going to put my fork right below that for this simulation. I wanted to make sure I had enough depth here that I could put this in the ground pretty far and not get to pull out with the strength of that tree. It looks like I got some pretty solid ground here to work with, so I'm going to break this off just a little bit further up, shove it in the ground as deep as I can get it, just like this. And now I've got my fork, or my simulated fork, if I'd have broke a branch off and made a fork, but I just made it by lashing two of these sticks together like this. So now that I've got my fork in the ground and ready to go, I can continue with my snare. Now I just need to use my knife one more time to basically cut my snare to the length I need it. So I'm going to go ahead and pull my branch down that I'm using for my springing device and go ahead and tie off to that. You just throw a couple half hitches in that to secure it. And then I want to pull this down about to where I want my trigger to be, which is about right in here. And then I need to leave myself enough rope here to make my snare loop out of. Then I'll cut it off. So now I've used my knife 2 times to cut cordage and nothing else. Alright, so now I'm going to take the other end of this, and this is where my snare loop's going to be. I'm going to go ahead and tie another small overhand knot in that to create my slip, And I don't want this loop that I put in here to be much bigger in diameter than my cordage, because I want it to slip, but I don't want it to foul my trap in any way. So I'm going to make that pretty small. Now, if I were going to use this for a fishing trap, I would make this quite a bit longer, obviously, and my hook would be tied to the end of this, and maybe my barrel sinker to throw it out on a bank line set. So right now I'm going to use it on the ground for a snare type set, but bear in mind that I could put this out into the water on a much longer string with a barrel sinker and a hook and a half a bluegill or whatever I have, a piece of frog bait, throw it out there, and then I can set this trap for that as well. I'll show you how to do that in a minute. For now, I'm just going to take and put my loop back through here to create my snare, just like this. So now I have a snare loop created that I can use for my trap. And I want to make sure that that snare is going to pick that animal up off the ground. So if it's not long enough, I'm going to need to wrap it around this a couple of times just to make sure that I've got enough space to get that animal lifted up off the ground when this trap springs. Now I can go through the process of bringing this over, identifying how far I want my trigger down on this trap. Find another stick. It doesn't matter what it is really. It doesn't have to be a perfect stick, just something that I can break off to make a toggle with. I'll tie one loop around, two loops around. I'll half hitch on one side of those loops just like that. I'll half hitch on the other side of those loops just like that, and that will secure my trigger to the string and make it fairly easy to get on and off for mobility's sake if I need to move it up or down.
Okay.
All right, so now that we've got our fork in the ground, we've got our snare set up, we have our toggle trigger system in place, we need a bait stick. And this is just another straight dead stick that I broke off and kind of pinched off pieces of it to make it sharp on the end so that I can bait it if that's what I choose to do for a snare type trap. Now I can shove whatever my bait is on the end of this stick, whether that's, you know, a half a frog, a piece of bluegill, some guts from something, or, you know, a granola bar or something like that, depending on what I'm trying to catch with this trap. The important thing to remember about this trap is it is a lever. So one end of this stick has to be buried pretty much in the ground so that when it pulls down, it doesn't have anywhere to go. If it can do this, it's not going to work. It has to be buried basically so that it becomes an actual lever. Okay? What I like to do with that is stick it right behind my fork and in the ground, just like that. Then what I'll do is I will pull this thing down. I'll come through my fork just like this, which leaves all of my lines, the line to my snare and the line to my spring device or my engine, and the line to my snare on the outside of this trap. Then I will take this triggering device and I'll set it to a hair trigger. And I can work on this just to make sure. Whoa, I almost let it go, and that's good. That's what you want. You want that thing to be set on a hair trigger so that when it goes off, you know it's going to go off. Now, remember, your bait's up here. The object of this game is for the animal to have to stand in your snare on the ground here, basically, to get to the bait. So you lay your snare out here, and you can stake it out if you wanted to. Cover it with camouflage. Your bait's up here. Now you have something about the height of a normal ground squirrel where he has to stand in this snare on his hind legs to reach up with his face or with his teeth to get to your bait and pull it down toward him. When he does that, his back end is already in his trap. So he's standing here and he's pulling the bait here, and he gets hung right here, as you can see. Now that wasn't a very fast trap because I left all the leaves on this not to destroy the tree. But you can see that that caught my arm very easily, and it would catch your prey that was in the trap. Now the other thing that you can do with that type trap that makes it very versatile is, if this were a long line, and I'll just take the snare out of it now, and we'll use our imaginations to figure that there's a fish hook on the end of this line. We would pull this down by the bank, use the exact same rigging or setup as far as setting this trap goes. We would set it on a hair trigger, just like we did before, just like this. And then this line that has our fishing line attached to it now, we would just take like a half hitch in this line and a loop, just like this, and attach that right to the top of our trigger stick. And then I usually tighten it down a little bit like that. And then this line would go out into the water and be tight lined just like this, with your bait on the end of it, your sinker, and it's out in the water. So that when the fish comes down and attempts to eat this and take it away, it sets the hook. It pulls up just like this and sets the hook. And as I said, This is not showing a real fast spring because I've got all the vegetation left on this branch. If I cut this off and killed this live tree, I'd have a lot springier device. But I didn't want to do that in this event, just kill a tree just to make a demonstration. I couldn't find a good dead one right here. So that will work for the demonstration. Again, the way that works is you take that line, you set it through your fork, just like this. Your toggle is here. You can hold that with one hand basically, and you'll set your triggering device right there on the trap, on the trigger itself, on the toggle, at a hair trigger. You would take this and bring it out, take 1/2 inch or one bend in your loop and come up so that you create a knot. Put that over the top and tighten it down. So now what you have is you have a tight line for fishing so that it sets your hook when it gets pulled off. So that's two versions of this toggle trigger with this X in the ground or this fork in the ground. If you used a regular fork out of a tree or a set of X sticks like this, that will work very similar to how the L7 works, except you don't have to waste the time and the energy to cut a bunch of notches. This works with very little tools. As long as you have something to cut your string with, you're in good shape. Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed this little trap demonstration today. Like I said, it didn't go off as fast as it normally would if the vegetation was all cut off of this green tree. But I wanted to give you that demonstration today and show you a couple variations of that toggle trigger system that can be used very similar to the L7 for fishing or for snaring. I'm Dave Canterbury at the Pathfinder School. I appreciate your views, I appreciate your support, and I'll be back soon with another video. Thank you very much.